Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Not everybody has the budget or is able to justify spending $250+ on top-end football boots, which is totally understandable and the reason why takedown models exist. However, as I've been saying basically since I started this channel and will continue to say, when it comes to takedowns, you have to consider your other options because there is a very wide range in quality when it comes to football boots at lower price points. With the focus of today's video being the brand new Adidas X Crazyfast.2, the first takedown model below the three top-end options within the new X lineup, bearing a retail price of $160, which granted is $100 less than the 0.1 model above it, but still at $160, that's a lot of money for a takedown model. With that price tag also being up $10 from last year's Speed Portal 0.2 that this replaces. With that in mind, if Adidas is asking a premium, then surely they must feel pretty premium. And unfortunately, if you're buying these in anticipation of getting a high-performing pair of speed boots, you might be pretty disappointed because there are certain things about this that I think are nowhere near to the standard that they should be given the asking price. Which is why in today's video, we're gonna go over all the details of the Crazyfast 0.2, talk about what's good, what's not so good, how they compare to other takedown model speed boots, and ultimately whether or not they are worth the $160 price tag. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, watch the entire review, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And really quickly guys, if you enjoy these brutally honest reviews, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So to start things off, I want to highlight what I would argue is the most disappointing aspect of the Crazyfast 0.2, and that is the weight. At $160, I think most people would expect these to be pretty light, but that is unfortunately not the case. And for the sake of comparison, I grabbed the also $160 Nike Mercurial Superfly 9 Pro, these basically being competing takedown model speed boots. Both in the same size 9.5 US using a scale. You can see that the Superflies weigh in at 8.1 ounces, the equivalent of 230 grams, which is by no means super lightweight. Obviously, the Elite model is a lot lighter, but it's in the realm of what you would consider to be relatively light. Then you have the Crazyfast 0.2, and you can see that they weigh in at 9.4 ounces, the equivalent of 266 grams. That's not light. And just to point out the absurdity of takedown models, particularly in the speed boot category, you need to do your research because as an example, I have the brand new Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Pro. These retail for $140, are definitely not marketed as speed boots, but as you can see on a scale, they weigh in at 7.05 ounces, the equivalent of 200 grams, significantly lighter than the other $260 speed boot takedown models, and they're less expensive. But not to draw your attention away from the Crazyfast 0.2, long story short, it's the heaviest Adidas football boot that I've weighed in quite some time. As for the upper of the Crazyfast 0.2, it is listed as having the same Aeropacity speed skin upper as the top end 0.1, with even the same Aero cage reinforcement. And based on what I can tell, it's not exactly the same, but it is pretty similar with one major difference, and that is the actual Adidas stripes in black on both the lateral and medial side. It might be a little bit difficult to see in video, but they're glued to the surface of the upper, and they're actually really thick. I would almost say they're as thick as the entire synthetic material itself, to the point where they are clearly raised on the surface. And it might sound silly, it might sound like I'm being a little bit harsh, but you legitimately can feel the stiffness from these Adidas stripes sitting on the surface of the upper. They add a significant amount of structure, and the end result is a very similar upper material to that of the 0.1 that ends up just feeling less pliable and in general stiffer in a bad way when compared to the more expensive model. The only way that I can describe it is it feels like they intentionally made the upper of the 0.2 worse. But I do want to be clear in saying that I don't think this is bad. This is actually a relatively premium upper for a takedown model football boot, although at $160, I don't think you should really expect anything less. You're still going to find a very thin touch on the ball from this boot with really no extra padding whatsoever. It has a little bit more of that raw synthetic feel versus what we had from the previous generation Speed Portal, which trended a little bit more towards being knitted. Overall though, I really do like the feel of this upper. Not much in the way of additional grip, and of course you do maintain that one-piece upper construction like the Crazyfast.1 would have, with the laces running directly down the middle, some form of a prime knit material across the top of the foot that admittedly is not as premium as what you're going to find on the top end version, but effectively does the same thing. And with the laces tied tight, you're going to find that the lockdown is really, really good. However, there are some changes to the shape and specifically the volume, which we'll get into in just a second, that I do think makes this football boot feel significantly less comfortable than that of the more expensive options. Moving to the rear, you're going to find that the low-cut design of the higher-end Crazyfast models has been maintained. However, because this does utilize a different sole plate, it doesn't have the stability wings down the side. Instead, you have a fully internal plastic structure for the heel that I would say is 3 or 4 times firmer than that of the top-end model, perhaps playing a role in the comfort issues that I have with the heel of this football boot, but again, we'll get into that in just a second. Internally, you're going to find a really soft microfiber lining material. Feels quite premium. Not a ton of padding back there, but for the most part, I would say a good amount in terms of what you would expect from this style of football boot. Then the insole, fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. Basically the same as the top end variation minus the perforations. A little bit of a cheaper mesh liner on the surface, but it's made from a single layer of this white foam, and overall pretty decent. Better than what we've come to expect from 0.2 takedown models. As for the base, despite looking very similar to the speed frame of the top end model, this sole plate is entirely different, utilizing completely different materials. The actual plastic plate itself isn't a plastic plate, it's just a different color of plastic to give the appearance of that plate that does give the top end models that super responsive feel. This is significantly more flexible and in general, just kind of a heavier, clumsier type of material, and part of the reason why these weigh so much more than the more expensive variation. So if you're hoping for that snapback sensation of the more expensive variations, you are not getting it here, or really anything close to that on the Crazyfast.2. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, that does remain the same. However, because the sole plate does feel so much different, these feel a lot less speed boot-esque in terms of giving you that sensation of being quick. Not to say that a top-end model will make you feel faster or will legitimately make you faster, but there's a sensation of that sole plate that really does put you on your toes, and you get a lot less of that from this boot, which does in turn make them feel a little bit more sluggish than the high-end model. Regardless though, the traction from this stud pattern is really, really solid, and if you've worn an Adidas speed boot in the last several years, you kind of know what to expect. On feet, the Crazyfast.2 only gets more disappointing, where over the years I've complained about a shallow fit through the heel in Adidas takedown models, and unfortunately that remains to be true with this football boot right here. All the pressure on your heel is placed really high up, and it feels like your heel does not sit deep enough inside the football boot. Not that they're going to fall out, because the lockdown is fine, but it applies pressure in a very uncomfortable way that will almost certainly give you blisters. And granted, it might just be my feet. I know there's plenty of people that wear Adidas takedown models, particularly the 0.2s, and have a really comfortable experience with them, but if you've had 0.2s in the past and didn't like the way that they fit, nothing has changed with this new generation. Even through the midfoot and forefoot area, the volume seems to be a little bit lower than what you're going to find from the 0.1, even though the upper is so similar. I just don't find them to be anywhere near as comfortable as the 0.1s, which I guess is a little bit to be expected, but again, at $160, I just expected these to fit and feel a lot better than they do. From a width perspective, they have some decent width to them, but in general are quite snug. If you don't like tight-fitting football boots, these probably won't be a good option for you. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, to keep things short and sweet, the Crazyfast.2 is one to avoid. The base upper is solid, but everything else about this product is subpar at best. For $160, they simply aren't worth it. They don't deliver on a speed boot-esque feel or experience, and the shallowness in the heel that has plagued Adidas takedown models for a very long time now is as bad as it's ever been, with the Crazyfast.2. You just have so many better options at this price point, either from other takedown models, the Nike Mercurial would be a great alternative, or just consider what you can get from a top-end boot in an older colorway or perhaps a previous generation that's been marked down to around $160. Even on sale, it's just not a good pair of football boots.